Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel. Going to be talking about what we need to be talking about with the Longhorns coming out of the second scrimmage of camp. This edition of On Texas Football brought to you by Advanced Pain Care. We'll hear from Advanced Pain Care with the help of a couple of lifetime Longhorns here later in the show. Gerry, I'll start with you. Let's start with a macro view, the 30,000-foot view. What do you need to hear about this team coming out of the scrimmage? And at that point, we'll be less than 2 weeks away from the Ohio State game.
Outside of Captain Obvious injuries, I want to hear that they cleaned up pre-snap offensive line penalties potentially, right? I want a little more cleaner game and not just first scrimmage, not first team, but maybe second team, the depth all the way through, clean some of that up. And I know that's easier said than done with the type of pressure Texas brings defensively, but I'm guessing Kyle Flood and Steve Sarkisian would like to come out of scrimmage saying the same thing. CJ. The other thing for me is, hopefully you get more of a full team look. Hopefully there's Emmett Mosley returns, right, to action, gets in a scrimmage, so he's actually prepared to play. Here's some Jack injuries is really is kind of he's found his way, but really just latching on now, with that first team as far as the second scrimmage with the Longhorns. Some of those things is kind of what I'm looking for on offense. Defensively, it's really communication was strong in the secondary because this is a game-like scrimmage. So it's not like Dwayne Akeen is going to be out there on the field barking signals to guys. These guys are going to be left more on their own because I think they want to truly evaluate those guys. CJ, that's a big one for me, is the communication in the secondary.
I think that's very solid. And look, I was gonna go that route. I'll flip back to the other side. You mentioned Jack injuries. What does his role look like coming out of scrimmage number 2? How much, whether it's just latching onto the offense, how much of that is he in control of that tight end position? And of course, we'll talk about which players do we want to hear more of. I just want to hear that tight end spot is up to speed. Of course, coming out of scrimmage 1, a lot of the headlines offensively was Ryan Wingo vertically down the field, Parker Livingstone vertically down the field. What about that middle of the field? Can injuries kind of fill that void? Can it be a Jordan Washington, who had a pretty solid scrimmage number 1 as well? I know Texas Football, their account tweeted out the video of him with a catch and run. Mm-hmm. If that's what Texas can continue to bring to the table offensively after 2 very solid years of JT Sanders and a record-setting year in 24 with Gunnar Helm, that's how you make life very difficult. And also, I'll stay on offense for this next part. Give me more and more and more about CJ Baxter. We heard from him Thursday afternoon. Again, Gerry, you mentioned injuries. It sounds like he's up to speed with what you would expect, close to 100% for that Ohio State game. If that's the case, how much more dynamic can that running game get with CJ Baxter in the backfield?
Gerry, let's stick with CJ Baxter for a minute because he, as we've talked about his rehab process, we talked about the long road that he's got to getting back, that he's taken. And the quote that he had when we met with him Thursday that really stood out to me, he said when he called his dad after the scrimmage, CJ said he was more excited about getting tackled in that game than scoring a touchdown. That, to me, is one of those things we talked about where the confidence, when he's got to run through contact, building that confidence, it doesn't sound like that's an issue for him after scrimmage.
No, and I think that's the biggest, after he's progressed each stage through here, like we've talked about since late in the summer, I think the thing is for him is getting through those first, that's the big mental hurdle for guys that had serious knee injuries. But is anybody surprised, CJ, Jeff, the way he's attacked everything? I'm not surprised. And I was very cautious all the way through with this because, there's the setbacks with it, the mental hurdles and everything that comes with having a major knee injury. But he has cleared every hurdle thus far. Now he needs 2 more healthy scrimmage Saturday, 2 more weeks of getting through practice out of setback, and he has made huge strides. But just his mindset and the way he's wired, I think CJ had some clips of just the leadership that this guy also brings. So when you carry yourself that way as a leader, you're going to be able to get past the mental hurdles and kind of get yourself ready to take those hits and put yourself in the mind frame of, look, this is either going to happen or it's not for me, but I can't go out there and be hesitant. The one thing you can't do is be hesitant because you're going to get re-injured. So I think he's been out. I think from what we heard last Saturday. He ran without hesitancy, and I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
CJ, we can lump Baxter into this group, but I think it's key to come out of this thing. The guys that are really important to your depth continuing to make progress and building off a strong scrimmage. It's not like a guy like Murad Watson, like we expect him to be a frontline guy. And the reports come on him coming out of scrimmage 1 were glowing. But a guy like Travis Shaw, Derek Williams coming off of the injury, Grayson Littleton, Ty Anthony Smith is a guy, Christian Clark at running back. Pick one of those freshman wide receivers. We talk about it all the time, and Sark talks about it all the time. It's going to be, if you win a national championship, you're playing 16, 17 games, you need darn near all 85 guys on this roster, scholarship guys on this roster to help you. I just think it's important that every day, every time you've got an opportunity to solidify and improve your depth, that step needs to be taken.
Yeah, in these scrimmage situations, it's all like that right there is what you circle and watch if you're a college coach, position coach in charge of substitutions and keeping your guys fresh. I'll throw out another one, cornerback. How does a Cade Phillips look one more time? How does a Warren Roberson? Is he fighting off some of these guys? Kenneth Santana Wilson getting into this cornerback rotation? Because again, we heard from Ryan Wingo Thursday afternoon saying, yeah, there's a young cat in that secondary that's giving me some troubles, and it's Cade Phillips. I think he's going to be a player. And, that's not surprising given this, the status of Phillips's high school recruitment. But again, you want to see that on the field, especially when the bullets are flying inside a DKR, when essentially you're betting on yourself to go compete and play early in the season. And then one other position, again, you talk about depth. Texas doesn't get to where it was a year ago without the depth that was necessary, that was required at the offensive tackle position. Now, which of Jaden Chapman and Nick Brooks elevates their play to become that offensive tackle number 3? Of course, we've heard Nick Brooks has gotten time with the first team at both right tackle and left tackle, just making sure he's up to speed with the speed of the game. But does either of them separate? Does either of them become a standout? Because that right now, Gerry and Jeff, it sounds like to me, if I had to pick a spot on the team that might have maybe the biggest question marks from a depth perspective, as well as maybe just overall body of work, it would be the tackle position, especially at right tackle.
Gerry, let's talk about the offensive line real quick, because I feel like 8 is always kind of the magic number. An O-line coach needs to have 8 starting caliber guys going into a year, probably to get through a year. And Texas actually, they haven't had any extended absences over the last couple of years with injuries on the offensive line. Yes, that group needs to improve, Gerry, but you mentioned earlier, CJ, you talked about, I know we talked about it over at ontexasfootball.com late in the week too. This game's going to mirror kind of what NFL teams use they usually have a game in the preseason they call the dress rehearsal game. The starters will play almost a half. Maybe some of them will come out that first drive of the second half just to get their blood warm a little bit. Gerry, knowing that Sark's probably going to scheme it up a little bit better, I think the offensive line needs to have a better scrimmage, because you're probably going to have more bells and whistles in the offense that are going to help them out a little bit this Saturday.
Yeah, no, I think so. And look, I think every scrimmage out, almost every practice out that's full contact is huge for this offensive line. Just playing together, communicating together, not on air. That just, look, it's all part of preparation, but that's not really going to be the ultimately what gets this offensive line where they need to be. It's playing against the Texas defense of front 7 when they pin their ears back and when they're playing at full speed. That's what this offensive line needs. And to your point on 8, I think it's going to be fascinating, because I think right now there's obviously starting 5. I think number 6 right now is probably Nick Brooks. I think number 7 is probably Nate Kibble. Is number 8 actually Connor Robertson? That's the question. Because when DJ Campbell went out that second practice in the media window, we were there, Cole Hudson shifted right back to guard. Mm-hmm. So who is actually that 8? That's what's the interesting question to me. Because both guards, backup guards right now, Nate Kibble, redshirt freshman, Connor Stroh, redshirt sophomore, have very little game experience. That doesn't mean they can't go out and perform, but they don't have a ton of game experience. Going to an Ohio State game, at least that game, I'll be surprised if the 8 doesn't include Connor Robertson, and Cole Hudson would shift out the guard if there was an injury.
All right, we'll get back to talking about the scrimmage, but right now, I want to thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. That's Advanced Pain Care. And here's a message from our friends at Advanced Pain Care.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. And Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain stops here.
CJ, I'll throw this to you because Gerry and I talked about tight ends earlier in the week. We know Jack Indries is number one. You mentioned him earlier. What do you need to hear or want to hear about that picture behind him, Spencer Shannon or Jordan Washington? How does Nick Townsend get involved in this thing? What's your take, CJ, right now on the tight end position?
Yeah, in years past with Sark, we've seen that second tight end kind of be the garbage man, if that makes sense, right? He's used in a lot of, kind of situational blocking, a lot of motion. I look at what Juan Davis was asked to do a lot last year is kind of get to the flat, sit there, occupy space, or be a safety valve for Quinn Ewers at the time. Now, will that be the case with Arch Manning? We'll have to wait and see. But I do think with the two bodies that you have of Spencer Shannon and Jordan Washington, you've got two guys significantly bigger than your second tight end a year ago. How much can they provide in that running game? On top of that, do they free up a Jack Indries to be the guy that is instead moved around in the line of scrimmage as well? But also, how does a Nick Townsend kind of fit into this, right? He's a guy that's got the size, he's got the speed, and he's got the physicality that we've heard of and certainly seen in his high school days, Gerry. How can he kind of fit into this conversation? Because we don't need to go over the infamous quote from Steve Sarkisian, but tight end's pretty darn important to this offense. And if you throw two guys on the field, well, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole either, but these tight ends provide some sort of mismatch physically and speed-wise that I don't think Texas has ever had, at least not multiply. Oh, that might not be the word there, but at least not with multiple guys on the field at the same time as we've seen under Sarkisian. So that's what I want to hear is how does that tight end spot create mismatches on the field, size, speed, physicality? I think it's as talented as Texas has ever had under Sark.
Gerry, you mentioned the offensive line a minute ago, and I think you can say a lot of the same things about the secondary. So whether it's how's the nickel position going to shake out, the corner opposite Malik Muhammad, what are you looking for in the secondary as we get closer to the Ohio State game?
Another strong performance from Derek Williams. Good things from Jelani McDonald, because I really believe Derek Williams' return has enabled Texas to take a strong look at Michael Taff at nickel. Because without that, I just don't think they're there right now. I think that would change. That changes the game. And then CJ mentioned it earlier, but look, what Gilbo starter Kobe Black. Now Kobe Black, the talk has been Kobe Black competed with Gilbo for a starting job. Well, what if he's suddenly competing with Cade Phillips for number 2 in a weird way as well? So there's a lot going on in the secondary. The backup safeties, Xavier Filsami's had a good fall camp. Jordan Johnson Rebel, I was told, had a pretty good scrimmage on Saturday, delivered some hits. Those guys trying to hold off that next round of safeties. One guy, I think we need to hear something from Saturday, assuming he's full speed, is that Jonah Williams took part and actually maybe made a couple of plays, even if it's a reserve third teamer, because, look, we just have not heard the name.
Yeah.
The entire fall camp, other than, he missed the first few days. If he's going to be in a position to potentially help this team early, even on special teams, we need to hear that something from Saturday with him. Else, it's 2 weeks out from game day.
I completely agree. And to piggyback off of that safety, kind of defensive back communication conversation, Gerry, look, we've talked about Michael Taff and how important he is. If he moves up to nickel at any point, there has to be a main communicator in the back end of the safety room. And that comes from a Jelani McDonald. That comes from a Derek Williams. If Texas trusts in Xavier Filsaime, Jordan Johnson Rubel, they have to then become the mouthpiece to get from sideline to sideline, the play call, the coverage, because it's tougher when you're in the slot to do just that with Michael Taff, no matter how loud he is. And, he's joked often that coaches are pretty happy those days when he's not talking. But that's going to be another point that I want to come out of Saturday hearing. Okay, they're talking, they're communicating, and it's not just the one mouthpiece that we've come to know and expect.
Hey, Jeff, I want to add real quick, and I hope you weren't going here next, but Ty Anthony Smith is a guy for me because he had a tremendous Saturday scrimmage, and Sark literally can't compliment him more than he has twice. I do think there's a plan this year to get Anthony Hill more rest so he's not as beat up late in the season. And in order for that to happen, Ty Anthony Smith needs to continue to be at the level that Sark's talked about. And I'm not saying Ohio State game, but I do think there's a plan to take a little bit off Anthony Hill's snap count to ensure he's closer to 100% late in the season.
No, that's a great point, Gerry. And Ty Anthony Smith had a great first scrimmage. We'll see what he does in the second scrimmage. Guys, we'll get to final thoughts in a minute, but real quick, not a great first scrimmage for either field goal kicker. Mason Shipley probably a little bit better than Will Stone, but Sark did say coming out that Monday practice, he was really impressed with how Mason Shipley battled back. What do you guys need to hear to feel better about the kicking situation going into a game where you're probably going to need to hit a couple of really key field goals?
Well, I think it's just the entire battery. You know, Sark mentioned something that was really interesting to me early in fall camp. Senior long snapper, senior holder, senior kicker. That, in theory, sounds great. Yet these guys have been working together for not that long, right? Typically, seniors, they've been together for a long time. So just that high-intensity kind of pressure situation, how does the battery, how does the snap, the hold, the kick, how does that process look now that they've had a week to basically correct some wrongs from a week ago? That's what I want to hear. Smooth transitions is basically the name of the game. Then it becomes muscle memory with the kick. But ultimately, let me hear that the process is smooth and the protection is there. We can live. I don't want to say you can live with missed kicks, but look, no kicker I've ever seen is perfect, not in the college level. But can you minimize the, kind of room for error with the rest of the process? That's what I want to hear smooth this weekend.
Gerry, I'll start with you first. Any final thoughts? Yeah. Look, we haven't mentioned Arch Manning at all, and which is hard to do, right? So we have to, right? But no, look, I think what we heard Saturday was Arch's misses were high, right? You want misses to be low. You don't want misses to be high at the quarterback position as much as he's throwing it down the field. So I think maybe just a better start for him in the offense. It would be, look, and again, there was bland Saturday. Last Saturday offensively. So this Saturday, I think you're going to see a little bit more than out. There's not parents and family members in the stands, right? You're going to see a little bit more than you were last Saturday, but maybe hear about a better start offensively for these guys on Saturday. And I actually expect that to be the case. CJ, you've got the last word here.
Yeah, I mean, this is exciting, right? Final scrimmage leading into 2 weeks before Ohio State. We're really darn close. And again, these practice reports, talking with you guys about what you're hearing and kind of comparing notes, it gets me pretty fired up for what this season will be. Again, how does Arch look to start? How does that offensive line look to start? Because when the bullets get flying, we've talked about this front seven. That's really the best way that Texas can prepare for Ohio State is tomorrow. What does that unit look like when a front seven, when a defense like the one Texas is going against every day is live and they're coming to earn their own, if that makes sense. So a smoother process. We talked about it with the battery, but move the ball early, get on top, because again, if Sark wins the toss, he's taking the football. He did it in Tuscaloosa. He did it in Ann Arbor. Can't have a sluggish start and get behind and fall behind in that momentum for Ohio State either.
All right, CJ, Gerry, thank you guys for the knowledge and expertise. As always, thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to the entire On Texas Football staff. If you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, get over there right now. Sign up using the promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. Again, the promo code is OTFOG when you sign up. That'll get you 1 year of access for $39.95. Don't forget to like this video. Make sure you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're getting the latest nuggets coming out of Texas camp. For CJ, for Gerry, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.